today's video, we'll look at a scenario in which Ukraine forms an empire. But how we're going to start this is, well, with them being buffed. We'll also get rid of NATO. And, well, maybe like this, approximately. And yeah, add more land to the blue occupied zone. And you may be wondering what's going to happen in this video. Well, at first, we're going to have a breakthrough. We're going to have these two fronts, which were open not too far apart, collapse as well. They're preventing. And we're going to... and they start pushing them back. Slowly, but they move enough forces to have a breakthrough here. And this cuts Crimea off. And then they move to take Melitopol. And then they cross from Kherson. And this area collapses. But their enemy still holds strong. Despite this. With them setting up an offensive from here. But it doesn't work out. And then Mariupol is taken back in a day, even though it took them 80 days to take it. May not a day, but in a few days. And then they push them back over here. As it's completely humiliated, Russia is. They think I can't get any worse. As they get invaded over here again. And it looks like this. And them having another breakthrough. And they decide to exchange some lands out of here for Crimea. Let's see how it goes. Occupied lands and a bit of land around into the Kursk and Belgorod areas. Well, with Russia weakened, they decide to go ahead and go after Belarus. As they see it almost impossible for there to be any counter attack. Because it is. In terms of numbers. And well, they quickly capture these lands. And then they launch a spearhead and they capture Minsk. As it still doesn't surrender, but then they take the western lands and move into the eastern lands. And well, they surrender. In Ukraine, annexes these lands, leaving the north independent. And well, annex. Well, Hungary is not liking this. Because Hungary isn't the nicest nation. And they open up a front line in the south. And they push up. And then, and they take the city. And well, they have a massive counter-offensive launched against them. And well, Slovakia throws support behind it. Yes, the anti-Ukraine faction. And well, the forces come and they get pushed back. But not fast because it's a mountainous terrain. And well, they still occupy lands. And well, an invasion of both of them. Neither one of them can really prevent it. They can slow it. As the spearhead sent down over here. But they do get pushed back. As a big chunk was encircled. But the encircled area continues to head towards Bratislava, the capital. And then a front line's made over here. As Bratislava is taken and Slovakia falls. Budapest then gets taken. And well, let's look into the peace treaty. Chunk of their land. But now Ukraine's focus is moved on Moldova and Romania. Yes, two nations. They expect some resistance in Romania. So the first part of the offensive, they quickly take over the coast. And during this, they move into Moldova. And they take Chisinau, not far in, and they do this, with them setting up a new front in the north. And quickly they kick Romania back, with Romania launching a counter-offensive over here. They even push them back into Moldova. And well, they continue the front here. And they extend the southern one, coming off from it. With Romania getting rid of this and then launching an offensive over here. But Bucharest, yeah, it's encircled. And Bulgaria doesn't want to intervene by letting troops access there, so it collapses. And they start an offensive in the mountainous direction. And quickly, Romania at this point is losing its ability to hold back. But they use what's left of their army at this point to launch one more offensive. And it fails, as they run out of resources. So this front falls a bit more. And then they decide to surrender. So let's see the peace treaty, and it's probably going to be harsh. Because, well, they have nothing left. No chance to fight back. So, harsh treaty. And then a few lands over here, and all of Moldova has been annexed. Well, now they go after Lithuania, which brings Poland in. But they expected it, so they had forces ready. And so they go into the Swask Gap, I think it's called, or something. Although it wouldn't be anymore, but it would still be functioning as one. And well, quickly they take Vilnius. While Lithuania starts falling, they also launch a small offensive from here. And well, they do this, taking over Lithuania, as they start a front in northern Poland. Poland effectively pushes them back, but not fully. And then they cross the border over here, as they launch a spearhead, which gets to Warsaw basically, but gets pushed back. And well, they launch an offensive in the northern part of their front towards the coast. And then they work on solidifying the gains, as a blockade is created by Poland. And they launch an offensive in the south. And they take Krakow. And well, then they encircle and take Lublin. And they move towards Warsaw, as a battle begins. And they advance over here. And advance there. To encircle Warsaw and then continue their offensive to the border of Germany. And they start this battle, slowly pushing in. Eventually it falls. Poland launches an offensive to try to retake the city, but they fail, but they manage to launch it across the north and over here, strengthening what they have. And well, they start getting it pushed back, and then they surrender. Let's see the peace treaty taken over, except, what can I call it? What looks like Prussia, basically. even though it's not. And well, they decide to do one thing that causes a war. They annex Kaliningrad. And then Russian offensive is launched. And it's actually a success. Which means it goes really well. Yes, they're going to have a good offensive. I know everyone's probably laughing. As they launch an offensive over here. As they cross the Dnieper River. And they launch an offensive over here. Taking Kiev, and then they take Odessa. But in the battle over here, they manage to push them back to the Dnieper. And then they cross in the center. As they push them back to their border here in the north. And well, they quickly push them back to Crimea. And then they launch an offensive towards, not Moscow, but Volgograd first, to make it easier to take a city. And then they encircle it, and they cut off this area. And so they use this to launch an offensive down the coast that's on the Azov Sea. So now they're able to take back Crimea. And then they launch a bit of an offensive south to where the mountains start. And then they advance a tiny bit to the north. And then they decide to launch an offensive towards Moscow, which gets there pretty fast. And then encircles the city and takes it with an offensive here doing this. And with the area in the south being there occupied and everything, they decide to meet for a peace treaty, the final peace treaty. We'll finally see Ukraine's empire. So let's see it. And while they annex these lands, and well, after they annex it, the Ukrainian empire is officially declared, as they have formed their empire. And well, that's all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, but not until you subscribe. Bye, guys!